Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're jumping right into a really provocative idea. What if one of the most important words in the Bible, a word that shapes how millions of people think about faith, is actually a huge mistranslation? So let's get right to the heart of it. The source material for this explainer poses a really powerful question. What if the whole idea of a divine promise, something you have to wait for, something in the future, isn't what the original text meant at all? What if it's something you get right here, right now? And this is where the core argument really clicks into place. On one side, you have the idea we all know, promise, or yaksuk in Korean. It's all about waiting for a future fulfillment. But on the other side, we have this proposed original meaning, Yeontong, which translates to connected news. This isn't about waiting, it's about receiving a message that creates an instant present-day connection. So to really get what's going on here, we have to look closer at these terms. And trust me, this isn't just about splitting hairs over words. This one little shift could potentially reframe the entire spiritual journey. So the first and most important word is Yeontong. The source says this isn't a pledge for something down the road. No, it's more like a live broadcast, a piece of news that, when you receive it, plugs you right into a spiritual reality. Think of it less like a divine IOU and more like a spiritual Wi-Fi password that gives you immediate access. All right, so if Yeontong is the delivery system, what's the actual message being delivered? Well, it's a word we all know, the gospel. And in Korean, pokum literally means good news. The gospel isn't a promise of news, it is the news. It's the content itself. And this all builds to the source's main point. Jesus didn't just carry the good news like a mailman. He is the good news. The messenger and the message are exactly the same thing. So when you receive him, you're receiving the news itself, and that divine connection is switched on. Okay, now that we have the key terms down, let's see how this new perspective totally transforms a story many of us have heard 1,000 times, the story of Abraham and his two sons. So according to the source, this is way more than just an ancient family drama. It's actually a living, breathing allegory for two completely different ways of connecting with God, represented by Abraham's two wives, Hagar and Sarah. You can see the two paths laid out side by side right here. On one side, you have Hagar. She's the slave woman, and she represents the old way, the covenant of law, a path based on human effort, on the flesh. But then you have Sarah, the free woman. She represents the new covenant. And her son Isaac wasn't born from human striving. He was a direct result of her receiving the connected news from God. So, what does all this mean for people today? Which spiritual family do we belong to in this big allegory? Well, from this perspective, the conclusion is crystal clear. Believers aren't spiritual kids of the slave woman stuck following the law. Nope, they are children of the free woman, spiritual descendants of Isaac, born into total freedom just by hearing and accepting that divine news. This is a total game changer for how you think about inheritance. It's not a reward you have to work for or a bonus you have to wait for. It's a right. It's a gift you receive the second you accept the connected news. Okay, but wait a minute. I know what you're thinking. What about the law given to Moses on Mount Sinai? I mean, that's a huge deal. Doesn't that change everything? Well, according to the source, the key is all about when things happened. The connected news, that original covenant, was given to Abraham first. Then, a whole 430 years later, the law shows up. And Christ, the source argues, came to fulfill that original news-based covenant. The logic here is kind of like legal precedent. You can't just cancel a pre-existing, fully ratified contract with a new rule that shows up centuries later. The original deal with Abraham, based on receiving news, still stands. It has priority. Okay, this is all fascinating stuff, but what does it actually look like in real life? How do you practically claim this inheritance as a child of the news? The source says it boils down to two key actions, and they come straight from that allegory. First, you have to recognize and really own your true identity as a child of freedom. And second, you have to actively cast out the slave woman and her son from inside yourself. And to be super clear here, this casting out isn't about pointing fingers at other people. It's a deeply personal, internal battle. It's an allegory for crucifying that old self, the part of you that wants to rely on your own efforts, that's tangled up in rules and the flesh. So the takeaway is really blunt. That part of us represented by Hagar and her son, the self that's always trying to earn its way, the one tied to the old ways, simply cannot inherit the kingdom. It has to be replaced by the new self, the one born of the connected news.
And all of this brings us to what might be the most radical shift in perspective of all. Faith is no longer about hoping for some future event to happen. It's about living in the reality of the connected news that has already been delivered and is already completed inside you. It's a massive shift from future tense to present reality.
So that's the final question I want to leave you with. When you think about your own faith, your own beliefs, is it a hope for something that will happen someday? Or is it the lived experience of a connection that has already been made? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.